They thought firing me in front of the entire executive team would be my ending. They were wrong. My name is Arthur Sterling, and what happened in that boardroom on Friday morning turned a corporate execution into a coronation. But to understand how a 25-year companyman got humiliated by a designer suit CEO, then became the single most powerful person in the building, you need to know about the brass compass I carried into her office and the lakeside handshake that happened 48 hours before she signed my termination letter. Let me start at the moment I realized loyalty has a price, and I'd just been handed the receipt. The GPS took me 40 minutes outside Chicago, where the lakefront estates have gates taller than most office buildings. Silas Green's property didn't have a gate. It had a forest, then a gravel road, then a house that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the cliffs behind it. I'd seen Silas maybe 3 times in 25 years. Once at my first company Christmas party in 1999, once at his wife's funeral in 2007, and once in a photograph that hung in the original headquarters before we moved downtown. He was a ghost. A name on founding documents. The kind of rich that doesn't need to be seen. His assistant met me at the door. No handshake. No small talk. Just a nod toward the back terrace. Silas was 82 but moved like a man who'd learned patience the hard way. He sat in a wicker chair, staring out at Lake Michigan like it owed him money. "Arthur Sterling," he said without turning around. "You're early. You said it was urgent. Everything's urgent when you're dying." That stopped me cold. He gestured to the chair across from him, and I sat. "Pancreatic," he continued, still watching the water. 4 months, maybe 6. I don't care much about the timeline. I care about what happens to the company when I'm gone. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. "You know who Victoria Vance is?" he asked. "The new CEO. Board voted her in last month." "The board I no longer trust," Silas said, finally looking at me. His eyes were sharp, gray, merciless. "She's not here to build, Arthur. She's here to gut. Sell the logistics arm to Brennan Global, liquidate the real estate, offshore the fulfillment operations, and walk away with a $40 million performance bonus." My stomach turned. "That would kill us." "It would kill 3,000 jobs," Silas corrected. "And it would erase everything we built." He reached beside his chair and pulled out a leather folder. Inside were documents, thick, legal, stamped with blue ink. "I'm offering you my 79% controlling stake," Silas said. "Not selling. Offering. For $1. I stared at him. "Why?" "Because you're the only one who still remembers what this company was supposed to be." He slid the folder across the table. "Because you missed your daughter's graduation to save the Portland merger. Because you've bled for this place, and vultures like Vance don't deserve to pick your bones." My hands shook as I opened the folder. "Sign it tonight," Silas said quietly. "And then let her fire you." I looked up sharply. "What?" "Let the wolves show their teeth, Arthur. You'll need to see who stands with you when the crown is invisible." He smiled, thin and cold. "And then you take your company back." I signed my name at the bottom of the page. Silas Green shook my hand. And just like that, I became the most dangerous man in Chicago. Silas walked me to the door himself, which felt strange for a man who had assistants to breathe for him. The house smelled like old wood and older money. Paintings I didn't recognize. Furniture that looked like it had survived wars. He stopped at a mahogany cabinet near the entryway and opened the top drawer. Inside was a small black box, velvet, worn at the edges. "One more thing," Silas said. He opened the box. Inside was a gold signet ring, heavy and scratched, with an engraved emblem I recognized immediately, the original Sterling Green logo from 1947. A compass rose inside a shield. "This was my father's," Silas said. "He gave it to me the day we incorporated. Told me it wasn't jewelry. It was a responsibility." He held it out to me. I didn't move. "Silas, I can't." "You can. You will." His voice was firm now, the voice of a man who'd built empires in boardrooms and back alleys. That ring has been in every major decision this company ever made. Expansion into freight. The Louisville acquisition. The pivot to digital infrastructure in 2003. He paused. It was on my hand the day I trusted the wrong people and stepped away. I won't make that mistake again. I took the ring. It was heavier than I expected. It fits the middle finger of your right hand, Silas said. Wear it when you walk into that boardroom. Let them see it. Let her see it. She won't know what it means at first. But the old guard will. I slid it on. Perfect fit. Silas smiled, and for the first time, I saw something other than coldness in his face. Relief, maybe. Or pride. They're going to call you weak, he said. They'll say you're washed up. A relic. A fool. Let them. Because the moment you reveal what's in that folder, every word becomes evidence of their ignorance. And if they fight back, they will, Silas said simply. Victoria Vance didn't get where she is by playing fair. But here's the thing about wolves, Arthur, they're pack animals. They follow strength. Right now, she looks strong. But strength without legitimacy is just noise. He tapped the ring on my finger. You have the legitimacy now. All you need is the timing. I nodded, my throat tight. Go home, Silas said, opening the door. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, she's going to try to destroy you. Let her think she succeeded. I walked to my car, the ring cold and solid against my skin. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the documents, at the ring, at the 25 years of scars I'd collected in the name of loyalty. And I realized something. Loyalty wasn't weakness. It was the longest game. And I'd just been handed the final move. Victoria Vance's office was all glass and sharp edges. The kind of space designed to make you feel small. I walked in at 9 a.m. sharp, carrying a brass compass I'd planned to give her as a welcome gift. Something about steady navigation. About honoring the company's roots. I never got the chance. Mr. Sterling, she said without looking up from her tablet. Sit. I sat. She was younger than I expected. 38, maybe 40. Designer suit, blood-red nails, the kind of haircut that costs more than most people's car payments. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on expensive upholstery. I'll make this quick, she said, sliding a folder across the desk. Your position has been deemed redundant. Effective immediately, your employment with Sterling Green Logistics is terminated. The room tilted. I'm sorry. I said, my voice barely steady. You're a ghost haunting a modern machine, Arthur. 25 years is admirable. It's also ancient history. I need people who can execute in real time, not nostalgia anchors. I felt the ring on my finger. Heavy. Grounding. I see, I said quietly. Security will escort you out. HR will contact you regarding your severance package. She picked up her phone, already dismissing me. That's all. I stood. My legs felt like concrete. Victoria, I said. She looked up, annoyed. I placed the brass compass on her desk. Welcome to the company. She didn't even glance at it. I walked out of her office and into the executive hallway. 6 VPs stood near the coffee station. People I'd mentored. People I'd fought beside during the 2008 crisis, the digital transition, the warehouse strikes. They saw me. I saw them see me. Not one of them spoke. Janet Coronel, VP of Operations, looked down at her phone. Marcus Tate, VP of Finance, suddenly found the floor fascinating. Even David Orzo, who I'd personally promoted 3 years ago, turned and walked the other direction. Only one person met my eyes. Tom Whitfield. Senior VP of Logistics. 20 years with the company. He gave me the smallest nod. I nodded back. That's when I knew. The wolves had shown their teeth. And I knew exactly who would bleed when I came back. They gave me 30 minutes to clear out my office. Security stood outside the door like I was a criminal. 25 years, and I got a half hour and a cardboard box. I started with the photos. My daughter's college acceptance letter, framed on the wall, ironic, since I'd missed her actual graduation for the Portland merger. A picture of the original Chicago warehouse team from 2001. Younger faces. Hungrier eyes. Most of them were gone now. Promoted, transferred, or pushed out by people like Victoria who saw experience as overhead. There was a coffee mug on my desk that said, "World's Best Manager." My daughter gave it to me when she was 9. I'd used it every single day since. I wrapped it in newspaper and set it in the box. The compass Silas's father had given him, different from the one I'd just left on Victoria's desk, sat in a shadow box. It still worked. I used to wind it during conference calls, just to hear the tiny click of the mechanism. Proof that some things still ran on precision and care, not just algorithms and quarterly projections. I put it in the box. My desk drawer held a flask I'd never opened. A gift from the executive team after we survived the 2016 audit. To the men who keeps the ship steady, the card had said. I wondered if any of them remembered writing it. If any of them felt even a flicker of shame this morning when they looked away. I left the flask in the drawer. Let them find it. Let them wonder. The hardest part was the wall behind my desk. 25 years of service plaques. Brass nameplates. Certificates of achievement. I'd stayed late countless nights. Missed birthdays. Anniversaries. My father's funeral. All for a company that just erased me in a 9 a.m. meeting. I took the plaques off the wall one by one. And then I saw it. A photo I'd forgotten. Me and Silas Green, shaking hands at the 2003 infrastructure launch. He was smiling. I was younger, thinner, still believed that hard work and loyalty were enough. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I slipped it into my jacket pocket, right next to the ownership documents. I looked around the empty office one last time. The walls were bare. The desk was clean. It looked like I'd never existed. But I knew something Victoria didn't. Ghosts don't haunt buildings. They haunt the people who wronged them. And I was about to become the most persistent ghost she'd ever seen. I picked up my box. I walked out. And I started counting down to Friday. I didn't go home. I went to a diner 3 blocks from headquarters. The kind of place with bottomless coffee and waitresses who don't ask questions. I sat in the back booth and opened my laptop. It took me 20 minutes to find the first email. It was from Marcus Tate, VP of Finance, sent to Victoria Vance 6 days before she was even officially announced as CEO. Subject line, restructuring opportunities. I opened it. Victoria. Per our discussion, I've identified several legacy positions that can be eliminated in Q1 without operational disruption. Topping the list, Arthur Sterling. His role has been largely symbolic since the digital transition. Severance cost is manageable, and his removal would send a clear message about the new direction. Happy to discuss details over dinner. Best. Marcus. I stared at the screen. Marcus. The guy I'd trained personally. The guy whose wedding I'd attended. Whose recommendation letter I'd written when he applied for Wharton's executive program. He'd sold me out before Victoria even had a nameplate. I kept digging. An internal Slack thread between Janet Coronel and David Orzo, dated 2 weeks ago. Janet, heard V is cleaning house. Think Sterling's on the list. David, God, I hope so. Guy's been dead weight for years. Janet, harsh LOL. But yeah. New era and all that. Dead weight. I'd fought to save Janet's entire division during the 2018 cost cuts. Literally went to war with the board to keep her team intact. This was my reward. I found more. A memo from Victoria to the board, dated 3 days before my termination, listing me as a cultural liability and resistant to innovation. Attached was a dossier, metrics cherry-picked to make me look inefficient, out of touch, expendable. And at the bottom, a list of co-signers. People who agreed I should be removed. Marcus Tate. Janet Coronel. David Orzo. 3 others I'd considered allies. Only one name was missing. Tom Whitfield. I closed the laptop and sat back. My coffee had gone cold. My hands were steady. I wasn't angry. I was clarity itself. These people had spent years smiling to my face while sharpening knives behind my back. They'd bet everything on Victoria's vision. They thought I was finished. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They assumed loyalty was the same as weakness. That patience was the same as powerlessness. I pulled the signet ring from my pocket and slid it onto my finger. Friday's board meeting was in 48 hours. And every single one of them had just written their own ending. The email came at 11 p.m. on Wednesday. I was still awake, still digging through the files I'd quietly copied before they wiped my access. The sender line just said, "A friend." No name. No signature. Just an attachment. I opened it. It was a presentation deck. 63 slides. Victoria's handwriting in the margins. The title slide made my blood run cold: Project Phoenix, Strategic Liquidation and Asset Reallocation. I scrolled through it, my chest tightening with every page. Slide 12. Terminate 2,847 legacy employees by end of Q2. Slide 21. Sell logistics division to Brennan Global for $340 million. Slide 34. Offshore fulfillment operations to Manila. Estimated savings, $67 million annually. Slide 49. CEO performance bonus upon successful execution, $42 million. She wasn't restructuring. She was dismantling. Every warehouse, every distribution hub, every team I'd helped build over 25 years, gone. Sold for parts. And she'd walk away richer than most people see in 10 lifetimes. The last slide was a timeline. The board vote was scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. Once they approved, the deal with Brennan Global would close within 30 days. Irreversible. I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen. Then my phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number. "She's betting you won't fight back. She's wrong. TW. Tom Whitfield." The only VP who'd looked me in the eye when I walked out. I texted back, "Thank you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then one final message. Some of us still remember what loyalty means. I closed my laptop and looked at the ring on my finger. The weight of it felt different now. Not like a gift. Like a weapon. Victoria thought she'd won. She thought firing me was the end of her problem. She had her slides, her board votes, her $42 million payday all lined up. But she'd made one catastrophic miscalculation. She thought I was just an employee. I wasn't. I was the man who signed her paychecks now. And in 48 hours, she was going to learn the difference. Friday morning came cold and sharp. I put on my best suit, the charcoal one I'd worn to every major board meeting for the last decade. I slid Silas's ring onto my right hand and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. Older. Like a man who'd lost something. Perfect. I arrived at headquarters at 9:45. Security didn't stop me, my credentials were still active until end of business today, a bureaucratic oversight Victoria's team had missed. I took the elevator to the 14th floor and walked past my old office. Someone had already moved in. A young guy, mid-20s, unpacking a box of startup books and motivational posters. He didn't even notice me. The boardroom was at the end of the hall. Glass walls. 12 leather chairs around a table that had seen every major decision in this company's history. I could see them inside already. Victoria at the head of the table, perfectly composed. Marcus, Janet, David, and the others seated along the sides like obedient soldiers. The board members were logging into their tablets. Victoria was smiling, gesturing confidently as she queued up her presentation. I recognized the title slide from the leaked deck. Project Phoenix. I stayed outside, just out of view, and checked my watch. 9:58. Tom Whitfield was seated near the middle. He glanced toward the door, just once, and I saw the smallest flicker of recognition in his eyes. Victoria began. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time for what I believe will be the most important meeting in Sterling Green's recent history. As you'll see in the materials before you, we have an extraordinary opportunity to unlock shareholder value and position this company for the next century. She clicked to the next slide. The Brennan Global logo appeared. I'm pleased to announce that Brennan Global has offered $340 million for our logistics division. This will allow us to shed legacy infrastructure, reduce overhead by nearly 70%, and refocus on high-margin digital services. One of the board members, an older man named Ed Calloway, frowned. What about the employees? Victoria didn't miss a beat. Transition packages will be offered. This is about evolution, Ed, survival of the most adaptable. I felt the ring on my finger. It was time. I opened the boardroom door and walked in. Every head turned. Victoria's smile froze. I'm sorry, she said, ice in her voice. This is a closed meeting. I pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table. The owner's chair. The one Silas Green used to sit in. And I sat down. I know, I said quietly. That's why I'm here. Victoria's face went from confusion to fury in about 3 seconds. Arthur, you were terminated. You have no authority to be in this room. Security. Check your tablets, I said calmly. Ed Calloway looked down. His eyes widened. He tapped his screen, scrolled, then looked up at me with something close to shock. What is this? He asked. Victoria's confident smile flickered. What are you talking about? SEC filing, Ed said slowly. Updated Wednesday at 11:47 p.m. Ownership restructure. Silas Green transferred his 79% controlling stake to. He trailed off, staring at me. The room went dead silent. Victoria grabbed her tablet. I watched her face as she read. The color drained from her cheeks. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly. That's not possible, she whispered. It's very possible, I said. Silas and I finalized the transfer 48 hours before you fired me. I now own 79% of this company. Which makes me not just a shareholder, Victoria. It makes me your boss. Marcus Tate looked like he'd been punched. Janet Coronel stared at her hands. David Orzo actually pushed his chair back like distance would save him. Victoria stood up, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. This is a hostile move. The board will challenge this. We'll. The board answers to the majority shareholder, Ed Calloway interrupted, his voice firm. He looked at me with something that might have been respect. Which is Mr. Sterling. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. The signet ring caught the light. One of the older board members, a woman named Claire Hastings, gasped softly. Is that Silas's ring? It was his father's, I said. He gave it to me the night we signed the papers. Told me it had been present for every major decision this company ever made. I looked directly at Victoria. He wanted it here for this one too. Victoria's hands were flat on the table, knuckles white. You can't just. I can, I said. And I am. Effective immediately, Project Phoenix is cancelled. The Brennan Global deal is dead. There will be no mass layoffs. No asset liquidation. No offshoring. I stood up and walked slowly to the head of the table. Victoria didn't move. She just stared at me, trapped between fury and disbelief. You're also not fired, I said quietly. Yet. Her eyes narrowed. What? You're going to stay on as CEO. Under my direct supervision. You're going to learn every single operation you tried to destroy. You're going to meet the people you marked for termination. And you're going to rebuild what you almost broke. I let that sink in. Consider it probation, I said. Fail, and you're gone. Succeed, and maybe, you'll understand what this company actually is. The room was so quiet I could hear the ventilation system. I looked at Marcus, Janet, David. The same goes for all of you. Then I sat down in the owner's chair. And for the first time in 25 years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The meeting ended in silence. No one argued. No one protested. They just sat there, processing the fact that the men they'd thrown away now held all the power. Victoria left first, moving stiffly, like her spine had been replaced with iron. Marcus and the others followed, avoiding eye contact. Only Tom Whitfield stayed behind. That, he said quietly, was the most beautiful thing I've seen in 20 years. I smiled, tired but genuine. Thank you for the files. Thank you for coming back. He shook my hand, firm and certain. Some of us never stopped believing. After he left, I sat alone in the boardroom, looking out over the Chicago skyline. The city I'd poured my life into. The company I'd bled for. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about making sure that loyalty still meant something. That the people who'd built this place weren't just discarded for quarterly profits. That the 3,000 employees who showed up every day and did the work still had a future. I pulled out my phone and called my daughter. Dad. She sounded surprised. I didn't blame her. I'd missed a lot of calls over the years. Hey, sweetheart. I know it's been a while. I just wanted to tell you something. Okay. I'm done sacrificing us for them, I said. I'm still going to work hard. Still going to fight for this company. But I'm not missing anything else. Not your life. Not the moments that matter. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, what happened? I'll tell you over dinner, I said. Tomorrow night. Your choice of restaurant. My treat. She laughed, and it was the best sound I'd heard in years. Deal. I hung up and looked at the signet ring one more time. Silas had been right. Loyalty wasn't weakness. It was the longest game. And I'd just won. Listen, if this story hit you the way it hit me, do me a favor. Subscribe. Not for me, but for us. Because these stories, they're not just entertainment. They're reminders that patience, loyalty, and integrity still matter in a world that tells you to quit, to move on, to forget. We're building something here. A community that believes the good guys can still win. And if you walk away without subscribing, you're telling the algorithm that stories like Arthur's don't matter. But they do. And so do you. So hit that button. Stay with us. Let's prove that doing the right thing still gets rewarded, even if it takes 25 years.